Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason. I'm speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And today in this video I'm kind of doing a book review of a book I just read. It is Paul McCartney's new kind of book called The Lyrics, 1955 to what, present, I guess. And it will show, this is what came in when I bought it on Amazon. It came in like this. Paul McCartney, The Lyrics, this big green. Has two books in it. There's a side there. Oh, there's the two books, and you see Paul McCartney's face there. And you have alphabetical order, A through K, and L to Z. And it has a quote there on the back. You can kind of see by Paul McCartney. I don't have to read it to you, but yeah, interesting coming in this big. I've never bought something that came this heavy, big, thick thing with two books in it. Because the two books combined are around 800 pages long. I mean, it's not super fancy looking. I don't know what you call this book cover. I saw somebody from England buy this and do an unboxing, and the one that they bought from the UK had I think they had the front had a picture of the Chaos in the back, Chaos and Creation in the backyard album cover on the front, if I remember right, and maybe in the back, I don't know, but it's definitely more fancy looking, and so there must be a difference between if you buy it in the UK, if you buy it in the US. Anyway, so, but whatever. I will say it feels kind of cool. I like the feel of the screen. I don't know what you call this material, but it's kind of cool looking. Books themselves are pretty interesting. The covers have lyrics of a certain song. Like this has lyrics to Hey Jude, and there's a picture of Paul there. And the back, it's the lyrics to Back in the USSR with a picture of Paul there. The second book has Yesterday with an older picture of him. I would say these are older pictures of him. Maybe I'm Amazed. I mean, some pretty iconic songs of his. So it's kind of interesting covers. Very nicely made book for sure. And yeah, it's just 154 songs that, you know, from, it says, I believe 1955 or something like that. I think to the present, I guess. So 154 songs that he had a part in writing, either co-wrote with like John Lennon or songs that he wrote during his solo career. And it just kind of goes song by song, alphabetical order, and kind of has the lyrics of the song. Show you a little bit. Like Let 'Em In. It has, you know, who wrote it. It says Paul and Linda, artist wings, and recorded, released, what album it came out on. And then it has all the lyrics of that song. That's how they do it for each song. So you get to read all the lyrics. And then it usually has like a little insert, or little Paul's writings of his, you know, partly about the lyrics of the song and partly just about what was going on during that time period when he wrote the song, what kind of mood he was in, and what kind of people, what kind of songs, musicians, what kind of events inspired the song. And he kind of writes a little bit about each one. Some are just a page long, some are a couple pages long, depending on the song. But it has incredible pictures in it. Maybe the best thing about this book is just there's a picture of him at the concert, looking out in the crowd. There's a lot of pictures like that, and there's old pictures of you know, him and John when they were younger, or him and the Beatles when younger, him around his house in Mulla Kintyre, or the Kintyre house, which is pretty cool. Yeah, just little stuff like him and his dog there. But the photos are absolutely amazing. Maybe the best thing about this book is just looking at all the cool pictures. Like I said, I especially love pictures of him and the early Beatles. Not necessarily them on stage, just them in the back, you know, in the dressing room or something, you know, just practicing. I especially love him and John when they're young, and it's just him and John with their two guitars just sitting there, you know, looks like they're in the middle of writing a song. You get a lot of these photographs of like the handwritings of the songs themselves. So you see what it was like when I guess he wrote the song, and he must have kept them, I guess. So you have photographs of them, of the song in handwriting that he must have written on something. But yeah, it's a lot of cool stuff, like picture of like Sgt. Pepper's outfits. So yeah, a lot of pretty cool history here about Paul McCartney and the Beatles, just through the pictures. Besides the writings of the song and what it's about. I love like the Hamburg days. Like I definitely love those pictures. Like even before they were the Beatles or Ringo got in there. Just them in the early days, just really amazing. But yeah, so that's kind of how each song is. Yeah, overall pretty cool purchase. I enjoyed reading it. Pretty quick read, and it says a lot of pictures in there, so it didn't take me too long to really get through the 2 books. And the writings aren't too long. Like I said, the longest writing is there's a foreword by Paul that's several pages long. That was pretty cool to read. Actually, probably the best part of the book is reading that and kind of him talking about the making of this book and talking about his experiences as a songwriter. I find interesting about the book, of course, is that he's writing about each song, and sometimes it's about the lyrics. A lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's just he uses the lyrics to kind of get to a story about that time period, and so you get a lot about his history and a lot of his personality in the book, which I actually quite enjoy. Because I wasn't sure when I bought it. I was like, is it just I've read so much about Paul McCartney and the Beatles, and I've read about the songs, and read, of course, about their whole history, so I know quite a bit. And so he kind of rehashes a lot of the same stuff that we've heard, but yeah, he puts a little bit of his Paul personality in there, which I quite enjoyed. Yeah, he'll just he'll tell a story about like how the Beatles started, or how he met Paul, or how he met John. Maybe he talks about a song, and then he'll start telling a story about. And almost sometimes he'll tell a story that doesn't seem like it has anything to do with the song that it's about, but he just uses that as an excuse to start talking about things about his past. And so it's a bit of a almost biographical in a sense. Really get a lot of biography of Paul himself and his feelings. And he talks about the breaking up of the Beatles, talks about meeting Linda, maybe his time with Jane Asher. Yeah, so a lot of he talks about drugs. Actually, it's kind of pretty forward about his drug habit, and enjoying smoking marijuana and doing LSD, and how that affected him on certain songs. Talks a lot about his parents, which I quite enjoyed because they were pretty significant. Of course, his mother, Mary, died when he was like 14, and his dad was, very influential to him musically because his dad played the piano, and he has fond memories of sitting and listening to his dad play the piano. And so there's a lot of stories about him growing up with his parents and his brother Mike that I quite enjoyed, and how certain songs had influence from them and their style of music. And he talks not a lot about religion and politics, just a little bit about religion and politics maybe. He grew up, his mom was Catholic, so he was kind of baptized Catholic, though he didn't really practice Catholicism. His family didn't really practice Catholicism. Seems like he believes in a higher power, but not necessarily. Of course, he did the whole transcendental meditation, Hindu. He dabbled in that in the late 60s. But some of the songs you kind of get a sense that he believes that there's a God, maybe, but not exactly God of the Bible, but some kind of God. So I don't know. I enjoy that, to see a little bit like what his feelings are. And of course, I don't agree with his politics, so some of the more political songs I kind of skipped over because I didn't really want to get into that. Like I said, there's 154 songs. He hits all his big ones. I mean, obviously, Let It Be, Yesterday, Maybe I'm Made, Bound the Run, Blackbird. All of his, most popular songs are in here. There's a lot of songs that are like real obscure songs that I don't get why are in here, or didn't really need to know about. Anyway, so it's kind of interesting the ones he picks and chooses. And there's some songs I wish were in here that aren't in here. I feel like he kind of misses out on some of my favorite albums, like New and Memory Almost Full, and Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, Flaming Pie. Those are like my favorite albums of his. It seems like he doesn't have as much on those. while he seems like it has a lot of songs from McCartney 3 on here, which was his very last album he made in 2020, McCartney 3 is like my least favorite Paul McCartney album. I don't think it's very good at all. Yeah, you get like half of the album on here, which I guess makes sense because it was the last album he made, so maybe it was more on his mind, and maybe he wants to try to keep selling that album, so he kind of definitely tried to put some songs in here, kind of keep me up to date to the very last songs that he wrote. Anyways, but I could have done without those McCartney 3 songs. I kind of like, there's some songs I really love, like The End from the new album, such a great lyrical song. It could have been, I wish that was in here. There's a lot of songs on Chaos and Creation Backyard, like I said, that I really like English Tea, and there's some good ones actually there. There's a couple good ones in there, but there could have been more. I like Early Days from the new album, which is a song about him and John writing songs. You know, that would have been a cool song to hear about lyrically, you know, that he doesn't touch on. Of course, interesting, he, of course, his love life, he touches on Jane Asher a lot, because you forget that I forget sometimes, he dated Jane Asher for like 5-6 years. They were a pretty serious couple. I think they were engaged at one time, but ended up not working out, and they broke up. So he does talk a lot about Jane Asher, and he loved being with Jane Asher because he loved her family. He stayed with them he talks about it in the book. It's one of the songs about staying with the Asher family, and he really liked the Asher family because they were this very more cultured, I don't know, more high-end society type people than he was growing up, and so he enjoyed talking, you know, about those, you know, politics and art, and, you know, getting into that with that family, because I think Jane Asher's dad was like a doctor and her mom was a music teacher, and so they had a piano at the house, and he ended up staying at the house because he visited so often that they gave him a room in the house, so he like lived with them for a while, and got to write a lot of great songs while he was living there. And he says like one of the things he hated was when he broke up with Jane, that he didn't talk to her, that he kind of broke up with her parents, and he kind of, Jane Asher's mom was almost like a second mom to him, and so that was very sad to him that he wasn't around Jane's mom as much, and he really enjoyed talking to her. Of course, she was a music teacher and all that, so they probably had a lot to talk about. So I found like that kind of information very interesting that I didn't really know a lot about from other books. Also, of course, Linda is obviously a huge inspiration to him, big part of his life, married to her for quite a while. A lot of pictures of her in here, and a lot of songs, of course, with stories with him and Linda that are really nice. And then you got his current wife, Nancy. There's some stuff about Nancy in here. I say most of it was about Linda probably, and then a little bit of Jane Asher, and a little bit about Nancy, his current wife, and writing some songs for her, about her, inspired by her. Interesting, of course, he doesn't talk about his second wife at all, which I didn't expect him to, but it was kind of interesting that that whole part of his life is totally gone. His second wife, Heather, I believe her name was. Of course, they weren't married that long, I don't think, and then they had a really ugly divorce that was very public and very nasty. A lot of bad press about Paul and that, and she said a lot of mean stuff towards Paul through that whole thing. And so, of course, he doesn't mention Heather at all. Heather's not mentioned one time in the whole book. I guess, like I said, I guess you don't expect it because that was a bad divorce. But it's interesting because I'm sure he wrote some really good songs about Heather during that time period that he won't cover. Like, I think Your Loving Flame is one of my favorite songs, came off of, I think, the Driving Rain album. It was like my favorite song off the album. It's a really good love song, and I think he wrote that when he was with Heather, but he doesn't talk about that song in this book, I'm sure, because he doesn't want to talk about any of the songs he wrote during the time period with Heather. So unfortunately, you miss a lot of stories in that time period because of that, I noticed when reading it. And just like I just said, I think it was a pretty good purchase. I can't remember how expensive it was. I think it's fairly expensive because it's two pretty good sized books together, and that packaging and all that. So definitely more expensive than I normally would buy for a book. But I just felt like I had to buy it because Paul doesn't really write books or come out. He hasn't written an autobiography. You know, he doesn't have a lot. He does, I mean, a lot of interviews, documentaries about him, all this. But I thought it'd be nice. Plus, I love his songs so much. I do enjoy reading about the behind the scenes of the songs that he wrote. And so overall, I thought it was a pretty good purchase just because of the pictures are so great, and also you get a lot of cool stories in here from his perspective. and you get a little bit of Paul personality. I guess the biggest thing about the book to me is that you kind of get a little more of Paul's personality in here, which I really enjoyed. You get stuff like he talks about bird watching. He talks about Jenny Wren, one of the songs from Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, I believe. He talks about that song, about Jenny Wren was like a type of bird or something, or name of bird, which I never knew. And he talks a little bit about that, and that he liked to bird watch, which I never knew was something he enjoyed doing. And he talks about painting. I didn't know he liked to paint, and there's a lot of pictures of paintings that he's done in here. And he kind of talks about, I think he likes art in total, of course. And he talks about, sometimes he describes a song almost through analogy of painting, so he uses his artistry of being a painter to describe songs, which I thought was interesting. He loves to read poetry. He likes to read Shakespeare. So you get like a lot of that stuff. I didn't really know a lot about Paul, like his love for that kind of stuff too, and how that inspired him to write something in that style. He thinks, I want to write something, like in this style or that style, and that's why he comes up with the song. So that's pretty interesting. It helps you kind of get in the mindset of how the song was written and why it was written the way it was and all that. So I enjoyed a lot of that. Anyway, so I'd say my favorite, like I said, there's a lot of songs that aren't very long, not writing about. Definitely Yesterday, that was my favorite part of the book. Obviously, it's my favorite song of his. It's one of the all-time great songs of all time, and he goes really into detail about all of that, about how he came up with the tune, and then how he finally came up with the words for it, and the meanings behind them. And even, I love how he talks about, he knows that people interpret his songs a certain way, and he'll talk about that. Like I know I've heard, you always wonder, does he hear all the stuff people say about him? And I think he does. And so he says, I know if some people think this song is about this, but it's not really about that, or maybe subconsciously it's maybe a little bit about that, but it's mostly about this. And so he kind of knows what the perception of a song is, and so he kind of corrects that a little bit and what his feelings are on it. But Yesterday, it was really beautiful reading about that, how he all came up with that, and the arrangement for it and all that. I really enjoyed reading about Yesterday. Eleanor Rigby was another one that I really enjoyed, him talking about how he wrote that song. Definitely were the highlights of the book, I think. Anyways, so yeah, definitely worth a purchase, I think, and reading. I enjoyed going through it, getting a little more about Paul anyway. So that's my review of Paul McCartney, the lyrics. So thank you for watching this video and for liking it. Tell me if you read it or what you think about reading it, or all that, what your views are, if you want to read it. Love reading that. Just thank you all subscribers for supporting the channel. Really appreciate you, and have a good day.